Hey guys, it's Tomatoda, and today I'm going to show you how I made this Mount Fuji shaker keycap. Let's begin. Just as usual, I first begin with a thin strip of polymer clay, blue for this one, and I'm going to wrap it around this PBT keycap. I'm not going to fully cover the top portion this time, I'm just covering it around the sides because on the top, I'm actually going to insert this small circular metal clay cutter that I got from Michaels. It comes in a pack. I'm gonna wrap and blend the clay around it. I chose to use this cutter because it has a non-porous surface, which means that the clay won't stick to it after it's baked. I'll be able to peel it off. Then I cut off the top just to straighten things out a bit and baked it in my oven for 10 minutes. Next, I cut off the excess on the bottom and sanded down the sides to make it smoother, but I ended up not liking the shape a whole lot because it was too angular, so I added some more clay to make it more mountain shaped. After that was baked, I cut out a wavy shape on the top, and one thing I did notice about the clay cutters, this clay cutter, is that it's coated with some kind of enamel that gives it that blue color. But by doing this, it actually scratched my cutter, like the surface of the cutter, which I didn't care too much because it's still going to work as a circular cutter in the future, but it did blemish the surface. I suppose a boba straw would work in a similar way if you don't have a, small cutter. But for this project, I didn't have a boba straw, so this is what I work with. Then using white acrylic paint, I did 3 thin coats on the inside just to make it more uniform because I wanted it to be white on the inside. And then using acetone on a Q-tip, I wiped off the excess. After the paint fully dried, I inserted the metal cutter back inside and I started layering UV resin around the top. I did have to flash cure it often because, the resin will drip or it'll pull off or something. So I would just do a few coats and then cure it and then a few coats and then cure it. And I repeated this around the cutter until it was as thick as I wanted it to be, which is about the same thickness as the clay. Once I was happy with that, I fully cured it into my lamp. Then I used my knife to carefully pry off the UV resin. And once again, this is only possible because the circular metal cutter is non-porous, so the UV resin also doesn't fully stick to it. If the cutter had a porous or rough texture, I would have a seriously hard time removing it. Then after that, I poured a bit more UV resin inside to seal the cracks and put it in my lamp to fully cure. In the meanwhile, I made a mixture of UV resin and a very, very small drop of white alcohol ink so that I can spread it around the inside of the shaker just to make it look nicer. After cutting off the top of the resin with scissors, I sanded it down with my nail file so that it can be a smoother, flat surface. And then I was like, why not just smooth out the sides as well? So here we are with that. Afterwards, I cleaned the outside and inside with acetone. Using a piece of packaging tape, I put it on a movable flat surface and spread some UV resin into a thin layer and fully cured that because it's going to be used as the top covering of my shaker. Here, I'm shoving everything I want into the Mount Fuji shaker and I spread a bit of UV resin onto the edges so that I can add my top covering and then, of course, cure it so that it becomes fully attached. I removed the excess with scissors and sanded it down. And now this part is where I add the baby oil inside. I used a hand drill to make a hole, and unfortunately, I didn't have a syringe. I only had this pipette, so it became a big mess. I ended up having to poke a second hole so that the air inside of the shaker could escape while it was being replaced with the baby oil, or else it just won't go in. Then I wiped everything off with acetone and began sealing the holes with UV resin. This was my least favorite part because it took a few layers of UV resin until the baby oil was no longer leaking. But I got there eventually. However, this little bubble from the puncture hole I just couldn't get rid of. But hey, I'll just cover it up later. I mean, part of crafting is figuring out how to hide your mistakes, right? Continuing on, I brushed the entire thing with UV resin and cured it in 3 full coats. There were some excess UV resin at the bottom, which I just sliced off and cleaned it up. Now, I'm going to cover that ugly little bubble with a rhinestone. I used a dab of Gorilla Glue to attach it on, and I thought one rhinestone was a bit boring, so I added another small one. And here is my keycap shaker! Finished! Yay! As you can see, it shakes. It's a shaker. It shakes when I shake it like this, right? But when it's on the actual keyboard and I press down on it, nothing really moves but the air bubble inside, because I guess it's not enough movement to shake things around. But hey, I'm satisfied with this experiment. It worked. It's a shaker. I'll call it a success. And that is pretty much all. So if you guys want to make your own keycap shaker, just know that it's possible. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye!